Jesus said, "Come and have breakfast." Jesus said, "Come and be fed." As we were working through the events of the week, one of the things that occurred to me is that I couldn't quite bring the message that I had planned for the day in quite the form that I had planned it. Life just dictated something different. And it occurred to me, and I remembered that there was one among us that has actually run the streets of Boston in that great event called the Marathon. And so I chatted with Wes, and we communicated back and forth, and I asked him to share something of that event and to bring a word for us this morning. So Wes and I are going to sort of tag team and do this together. Maybe this is one of those things in community that we need to be together. So Wes, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Last December, after the unbelievable tragedy that occurred at Sandy Hook Elementary, Pastor Ron gave a sermon entitled, "I Believe Even When." It was a clear, unequivocal reassurance that the love of God is here with us, in us, and around us, even in times when most of us can't comprehend the seeming evil that is also around us. This past Monday, we were again reminded that evil is among us. For some still unknown reason, someone set off bombs designed to do as much carnage as possible around the finish line of the Boston Marathon. The Boston Marathon is very near and dear to my heart. I've had the good fortune of being able to participate in this, one of the world's truly great sporting events, on 3 occasions. Boston is different than most marathons. There's only 2 marathons in the world that you have to qualify for. One is the Olympics, and the other is the Boston Marathon. And the qualifying standards, as you can see on the board there, are tough. And except for the very few number of world-class runners making it to the Boston Marathon, that is the pinnacle of your running career. This is a big deal to those of us who run. And do the people of Boston ever support it? I won't even go into all the pre-race activities that go on. But suffice it to say that everything that is done first class. It is all out. But the race itself, all marathons are 26.2 miles, and somewhere between 2 and 5 million spectators lined the course of this 26-mile event. Think about that, 2 and 5 million. The police didn't mess up, security didn't mess up. When you've got that kind of number of people, if somebody's determined to do something, they're going to. But between 2 and 5 million spectators line the course, and they cheer loudly and boisterously for every runner that goes. We are surrounded from beginning to end. The only time that we're not surrounded by people is there's one small area where we go over a bridge and people can't be beside us. But other than that, we are supported that whole way. Now, as you finally make the final turn onto Boylston Street, you still have about a quarter of a mile to go, and all this cheering that you've heard all the way, it's even amplified more. Now you can see the finish line. This, the finisher's medallion. This is what you came for, and you can see the finish line coming. It's beautiful, this blue and gold necklace with this find a computer, it's within your reach, and most of us get a big shot of adrenaline at this point, and if you're anywhere close to what your time is, now you're sprinting. You are sprinting, and then all of a sudden, explosions, smoke, nails, BBs, shrapnel. I don't know what your reaction was. Several things come to mind. Rage. How dare you do something like this? If you hate them, if you hate Americans, first of all, this is a worldwide event. Whatever country you're from, there's somebody from your country running. Whatever your religion is, there is somebody from your religion running. So what are you doing? Are you just telling the whole world that maybe your first reaction was revenge? You know, in Texas, we know what to do with people like this. But up in Massachusetts, they don't have the death penalty. And so you better turn this over to the feds. Don't get in any of these jurisdiction squabbles, because these guys need to die. Or maybe your reaction was like mine. For lack of a better word, sadness. I would not allow myself to start crying because I didn't know if I'd be able to stop. You know, this is too much for me. This is too much for West Boullioun. I cannot do enough to reverse the problems of the world. I'm sad for the runners who didn't get to finish. I'm sad for the 170 or so people who were physically maimed. I'm sad for the thousands of people who were psychologically traumatized. I'm sad for the innocent people who lost their lives and the ripple effect that has on their families, their friends, and their communities. Even worse, I'm sad for a world that produces people with this kind of hate. I am sad for the future. I'm just sad. So what am I going to do? After the shock wore off, I thought about it. And I thought about three things. And one of those is I'm going to use the lesson of community that I learned at the Boston Marathon in order to aid in my own personal healing and to color my outlook. In 1988, there was a watershed event at the Boston Marathon. A Kenyan named Ibrahim Hussein won the race, and that was the first time anybody from Kenya had ever won the race before. Well, in the 26 years since then, over 80% of the races have been won by a Kenyan, and in 100% of the races, a Kenyan has finished in the top 5. You know, in other words, the Kenyans know something the rest of us don't. In the year 2000, when I was up there, before the race, I was watching a TV interview with the defending champion. And somebody asked him about the Americans. And he said, well, the Americans will never beat us. The Americans aren't willing to do what it takes to beat us. Now, as an American, that kind of hacked me off. But he was really right. First of all, I want you to hear the words that he used. He didn't say an American will never beat me. He said an American will never beat us. That's number one. Number two, he said they're not willing to do what it takes. Well, here was the difference between the American runners and the Kenyan runners at the time. At that point in time, the 5 best American runners lived scattered throughout the United States. And never did they ever meet. And never did they ever talk together. And never did they share training secrets. But the Kenyans, they train together. They don't hold back any secrets. And they hold each other accountable when they're training out there. And what's more, they don't care which one of the 5 of them wins as long as one of the 5 of them wins. You see, they're a team. You know, that's the same lesson that there is in Christian community. Why do we come together as a community? You know, there's no lone wolves in Christianity. The lesson here for West Boullioun is that by myself, I cannot do everything it takes to reverse the world's ills. And if I take that on, depression, failure, and hopelessness are the logical outcomes. I'm going to tell you something else. While those people were out bleeding, I am completely useless. But you know what? As a Stephen minister, I can help people after the bleeding stopped. I can help people work through their grief and find their hope. As a Christian, I'm useless at a lot of things, but I don't have to be responsible for that. I just have to do my part. Because other Christians are able to do those things that I can't. You know, Paul talks about that in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 through 31, the different parts of the body. We got to get it. We got to get it, folks, that just do our part. God has given each of us spiritual gifts. Just use the ones that He's given you. That's all He wants from you. So I'm not in it here. I'm not in this alone. God is here. He is within us all and using us all as instruments of His grace. And I want you to think about this. Each and every act of evil that I have seen in my lifetime has been met with even greater acts of love. And that leads to point number 2. I am going to look for and acknowledge the love of God that did exist and does exist in the midst of this terrible event. And one does not have to look hard or far to see the outpouring of love that took place. Runners, first responders, spectators, in other words, everybody jumped in and did their part. There were people everywhere that used their God-given talents and abilities to help in whatever manner was needed. Strangers were giving people clothing. "How can I get this back to you?" a runner would ask. "You don't need to," was the response. Did y'all know that the blood banks were so inundated with donors in the first several hours that they sent them away? They said, "We've got all we need now. We might need you back later, but we've got so many now, we can't handle anymore." Do you know how many of those runners were saved because there were so many military people who were out there and they knew what to do? Most things like this, people bleed out. There were so many military people along with the first responders there that you know, that is a miracle. That is a miracle. Well, I've got news for you. There are countless stories like this. There are countless stories like this, not just during the Boston Marathon, not just during tragedies, but during Monday, April the 22nd in Seguin, Texas. There are acts of love that go on everywhere. Now, you know what? That doesn't sell internet ads, and that doesn't make for good TV. But that is real, and I refuse to ignore that. Same thing, Mr. Rogers. I don't remember if y'all remember Mr. Rogers. On the internet it showed, one of the things it said his mother always said, during times of tragedy, look for the helpers. Folks, they're here. And that leads me to finally to point number 3. I'm going to read my Bible. been working with the youth, and we've been studying the Sermon on the Mount. And what it says in Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48 is this. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those that persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now, in my concordance, it goes on to state that the phrase, hate your enemies, is not found anywhere in the Old Testament. However, hatred for one's enemies was an accepted part of the Jewish ethic at that time in a lot of circles. And by the way, it's an accepted ethic in today's life. Well, Jesus is changing that. Hatred is not the way. If you are going to follow me, you are not going to try to out-hate anybody. It also goes on to say, in my concordance, relative to loving your enemies, it says the following. Prayer is one of the practical ways love expresses itself. Now, that is a tall order. But as Christians, we're called to do tall things. So I offer this prayer to the perpetrators of the Boston Marathon bombing. Heavenly Father, I pray that your will be done in the lives of these people. Your ways are not my ways. You used Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, to deliver the message of salvation to the Gentiles. So I acknowledge my lack of understanding and my limitations. I pray that your will be done in regards to these people. And any person held in unforgiveness in my heart. God, I also pray for myself. I pray that I may not waste my energy hating these people. I pray for forgiveness for my own mistakes and failures, and I pray that I may keep my heart, my mind, and my ears open to hear what you would have me hear. Evil exists, no doubt about it. But I will not try to conquer evil by hating it. I will do my job. There is more love in God than there is evil in men. Love wins. Ron, like you, I believe even when.
Even then. I believe in the sun, even when I cannot see it shining. I believe in love, even when I cannot feel it. In the days following the resurrection, Jesus appeared to His disciples and His followers in many ways and in many places. He met them on a road going to a place called Emmaus. He appeared suddenly in a room with locked doors, and they couldn't understand how He got there. And then, as Mike read for us this morning, He cooked breakfast for them on the beach by the Sea of Galilee. Get a visual image of that just for a second. Jesus cooking breakfast for you and me and those fishermen out there, and all the visual images there. There's the water in the boat, the fish, the nets. There's the men. There's Peter. Don't you just love that moment there? You know, Peter just frantically trying to get to the shoreline. There's Jesus, the fish, the bread. But you know what the most poignant image is? It's the one we most often ignore. It's there in the left-hand corner. It's a little fire. A charcoal fire That little fire is burning and Jesus is cooking the fish over that fire. You ever snuggle up around a campfire on a cold evening? Kind of dry your clothes, toast your marshmallows. John, in the 21st chapter, verse 9, uses the word anthrakia. Anthrakia to describe what's there. That word appears only one other time in the Scriptures. It's also in John's Gospel, just a few chapters earlier. In chapter 18, verse 8, John uses the word anthrakia to describe another charcoal fire. It was the night that Peter was sitting around the courtyard, warming himself over the fire that some had built there in the courtyard. Just a few feet away, behind those walls, Jesus was under arrest and being thrown through the mockery of a trial. Soon the beatings would begin. And there, while he was warming himself around that fire, Peter was asked by one of the others, "Aren't you one of his followers?" Not once, not twice, but 3 times that night, Jesus denied everything, refused to be identified with this Messiah. He betrayed him. Can you imagine Peter standing on the beach that morning with the resurrected Christ cooking him breakfast and looking at that charcoal fire? Can you imagine the shiver that must have gone down, up and down Peter's back? I think all of us, at one time or another, have gathered around that fire on Thursday night. That fire in the courtyard. And we have betrayed Christ in one way or another. Sometimes that betrayal comes in the way in which we do things, in the way in which we treat other people, in ways in which we have denied the truth that Christ has revealed to us. And there are times when we betray Him, not by the things we do, but by the things that we should have done, that we just did not do. But it is still that same Christ that still invites us to come and warm ourselves in His presence. So let us feed Him, be fed by Him. That day on the beach, Jesus stood and visited with Peter. The one who had let him down, betrayed him, denied even knowing him. And he said, "Peter, this ain't over. We have some work to do, you and I." The invitation still goes out to gather around and warm ourselves and be fed by a Jewish carpenter who walks on water. If you're looking for a church home, looking for a place to put down roots, we would invite you to join with this community of faith that's just trying to run its own marathon, headed toward a finish line somewhere. We would be glad to transfer your membership from any other Christian denomination by the ways we do that. If you've never been baptized, I would love to meet with you and make those arrangements for you. But I would invite all of us to just renew our faith in Christ and our belief that God has promised us good for our lives, even in the midst of dark times. Let us stand and sing, "Will a Circle Be Under?"